Welcome back to All of Your Stories. I'm your host, Hava Gurevich, and today I'm joined by multidisciplinary artist, videographer, photographer, and writer, David Olson. David's work lives somewhere between observation and abstraction. Whether he's filming legendary musicians like Ornette Coleman or finding unexpected compositions hidden in everyday moments, he approaches art as a way of seeing rather than simply documenting. In this conversation, we talk about the experiences that shaped his creative path, including a life changing event that deepened his commitment to creative work and shifted the way he sees both art and life. We explore synchronicity, process, experimentation, and the idea that success might have less to do with outcomes and more to do with staying connected to the daily practice of making art. Help me in welcoming David Olson to this episode.
Now, quick word from our sponsor, and then we'll get right back to the show. When I started selling my art, I had absolutely no idea how to actually turn it into a business, a professional business. And then I came across art storefronts, and that was a game changer. I've been a customer now for years, and they've been instrumental every step of the way of helping me succeed. I have a gorgeous, powerful commerce website. I have marketing tools and a membership to a community that is very supportive and teaches me how to succeed as an artist. Check them out, artstorefronts.com, and tell them Hala sent you.
All right, welcome back to I Love Your Stories. And my guest today is a very close old friend of mine, Dave Olson. Dave is a multidisciplinary artist, videographer, photographer, storyteller, so many more things. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's fun to finally be here.
I know. We've been planning this for a while. So let's just start. If you want to talk a little bit about your background and sort of how you got into arts and
Yeah, it's funny because I listened to a couple of your podcasts earlier today because I realized just to refresh my memory, and thought about that question. I'm like, oh God, just like 10 minutes ago, I was thinking like, I don't know, how did I? Like, I don't know what happened. So there wasn't really there's certainly no plan, and I didn't really even realize I was pointed in that direction, I think, until, pretty late in my life, or later, I mean, like 40 or something, where I was like, oh, this is kind of what I'm doing. This is what I've been doing with most of my life, is some sort of creative something. And I think that's just the way it is. But I did. I mean, I think that curiosity was there because of my mother growing up. She was an artist, although she didn't really call herself an artist, but she wrote poetry, and she was a very good drawer. She can draw, and she did. She drew a lot, and sang. She had a guitar, and she played music and sang, and she was just in photography. So I grew up in this house where she was also a single mother, so there wasn't a whole lot of time for her to do those things. But that's kind of my basic. That's what I realized sort of sent me on the way, or at least prepped me to put up those receptors. As I went out into the world, I was already looking at it as sort of through this creative lens, in a sense.
you were involved in music earlier on, right? Like when we
Yeah.
were in our 20s or
Yeah.
or was it
Yeah,
30s?
I did a lot of different things, and that's sort of the deal. Is like I realized the only thread is that there was like creativity,
Mhm.
and that was with music. And I was promoting stuff then. I mean, I was a DJ on WCBN FM Ann Arbor. It's part of the University of Michigan, and it's a free-form station, which means it doesn't format. It doesn't tell the DJs what to do. So the DJs look at it as sort of an art form, that putting, what we now love to call curating
Yeah.
the music, that, you got to make your own show, and the being a DJ was a creative act. It wasn't just writing, playing whatever was on your list. So from that, I somehow ended up doing, promoting funk record, European record labels, and, working with some great musicians and musical artists doing, in that world a little bit.
Would it be fair to say that, like early on, your passion really was travel?
Yeah, it was travel. It was traveling and writing. I mean, I thought I was a writer. And so all through my 20s and into my 30s, I was trying to be a writer, uh, and I knew that that meant I had to go, travel, and I had to suffer for my art, in Paris and be poor in Paris and et cetera. So I did all those things. But yeah, at first it was traveling. I mean, there was just something about, I mean, you've done a bit of
Yes.
traveling yourself and living in different places. And there's,
Opens your horizons.
yeah, and if your horizons want to be opened, like
Yeah.
you start moving around, you're like, oh, this is what I want to do. Like
Yeah.
every day, it's a different language, it's a different food that you're putting in your mouth. I think that's interesting to creative people. Um,
Yeah, and one of the things that it does, at least for me, both the travel that I did when I was a kid and didn't have a choice in it, and then also the travel that I continue to do when I was older, is it really helps you step out of whatever cultural norms that you grew up with and see them as such, as constructs.
yeah, you
Um,
realize right away they're totally
yeah,
arbitrary. It's
yeah,
just what everybody has agreed that they are, in the way
yeah.
that you do things. And yeah, I agree. And we were talking about this the other night, I think, but getting into the same mental rut where you're sort of thinking the same things and doing the same things more or less. And it's hard to, get outside of that because you just kind of get into these patterns of thinking and behavior. And that doesn't really help creative process
Yeah,
at all.
it's actually the opposite of that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You do that, then nothing interesting will ever happen because you already know what's going to happen. So I think even things like just going to the store and in a different culture, in a different, you just realize every little thing. Yeah, that was actually one of the big attractions to me for France was even as a 19-year-old when I went over there to live the first time, 19 or 20, and I was like, oh, like when my 20-year-old French friends get together for a party, they mean we're having dinner. Like we're cooking dinner and everybody brings something and you're talking and cooking and drinking wine and I'm like, oh, I like this. Like this is if I'm gonna
This is life.
yeah, I'm like, this is how I want to
Yeah,
socialize. So it's interesting if you travel and especially if you live in different places a little bit, you can pick and choose a little bit.
exactly. And
And
you can take something from a culture that you really that resonated with you and bring it back and make it your own. Because yeah.
yeah.
So I know you have a really great story that kind of puts you in a mindset of wanting to do more with your life.
Ah, yes. Yeah, that's a weird one because it was I mean, it sounds dramatic when you say it like that because I'm like it's like, wow. I mean, I've done a lot of stupid and dangerous things in my life. So I've been, and like a lot of people, I've had times where I think at the time or realize after like, wow, I could have died or I might die. I'm in the middle of something and dying is on the table for this, Um, but that was the one time I knew I was dead. Thankfully, I was wrong, but I was like, oh, and it was rock climbing in Sardinia. And, long story short, me and a buddy, guy who Chris Thompson, Chun Boy, we were out climbing things that we shouldn't have been climbing, like serious rock climbing. Like what found out after the fact was like people from around the world come and, use ropes and we're just in our Chucky Taylors and t-shirts and climb, it was really stupid. And we got stuck in a bad place where, you know, I was like pressed against this wall, of rocks with all my weight on two fingers and my right knee. And my muscles started shaking and I didn't, so I'm like, all right, you're gone, like there's no, it's over. And the whole, life flashing before your eyes did happen. It was like, like a fast montage of everything. yeah, and there was this sort of feeling like, wow, that looked sort of interesting, but it was like, but you know, you didn't really, you didn't really try to do anything. You didn't really, you know, I don't know if I would say I thought I had wasted my life, but yeah, there was that sort of planted the seed of, uh,
Well, don't leave our audience hanging. What happened?
oh, I made it. So, yeah, so there was that moment, and I told my buddy Chris to go ahead because, you know, he had gotten stuck at one point, and I stopped and was sort of talking him up, and then I got stuck, and I told him to leave. I'm just like, if you can go, just keep going. You know, I didn't want him to see me drop, and um, so I was about to drop. You know, it was like you know, my muscles were shaking and the whole shit, and I just thought, you know what? I'm going to go out scrambling up, even though there's nothing there to grab onto. You know, there was nothing. There was like nothing. So I was just like, I'm not going to just drop. You know, I don't want to. This is the one decision I have left I can make is like, I can either just wait until my body physically won't hold on, which was a pretty strong urge, actually. Was like, of course, I'm going to bite into this rock and try and keep myself on it with my teeth, you know, if I have to. And then I just thought, I'm going to just scramble up. And then maybe Chun will see me and at least he can tell people, oh, he was trying to climb up, you know. So anyway, I just let go and started moving my hands up and down and, you know, had bloody knuckles but somehow got up to a little, you know, ledge about that wide and, you know, eventually got up. And yeah, Chris and I didn't talk the whole drive home. So we'd driven out into the desert and done this. And we went up, came down, didn't say, didn't say a word. We got halfway back to the village where he and his girlfriend were living. And the only thing he said was, we can't tell Paula, his girlfriend, because like that we almost died, you know, it's like, but it did plant that seed of just thinking like, you know, dig a little deeper. Even if you don't know exactly, I didn't have the thing like, okay, now here's my plan for the rest of my life and I'm going to follow it. But it did encourage that idea of like, if you like something, it's like, do more of that, you know, or something's interesting, dig a little bit deeper. Like just, you don't have to go crazy, but like move towards the things that, you know, attract you and that make you happy or just seem interesting. You know, there was a lot of blank time in my montage at the end of my life, you know, or a lot of sort of circular, you know, like you really I really got a sense of like what I had done with my whole life. And it was just like, there was a lot, you could have been doing something else a lot of that time. And I think that serves making art well too. Just that idea of like, just keep poking around, even if you, and then you find something and then you can run with it. You know enough to run with it. But if you can't, even if you're not running with something, it's like poke around, ask questions, try something, you know, like do both in art and just in life. Like don't stop.
And the art form that I'm most familiar with that you do is videography. And um, I feel like you're really pushing the boundaries of what that medium is as far as an art form. Um, where did that come from?
It's funny. And thanks. I'll take that as a compliment. And, yeah, I mean, the whole doing video really came just slowly and sort of organically over the years from doing, you know, when I moved to New York, I was doing what we called back then internet radio, what we now call podcasts.
Mhm.
And so that's how I got into sort of media and playing, you know, I'd already played around with photography a little bit, but that got me playing with media. I sort of carried the aesthetic that I had discovered for photography into video. I mean, that's one of the things, which is sort of abstract. There's like this
Mhm.
sort of abstract and sometimes micro and sort of, I mean, in a way, doing all the things that video isn't good at, or you don't think it's, you know, it's all the things you usually avoid with video. You know, look at it differently. What if it's not just documenting something? Maybe that's it. That's the begin. I think that's the kernel of it is I had no interest in, I mean, I've done some documentary type stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I get it. And there's a lot of great creative documentaries, it's a thing. But in general, like if I'm doing my own video thing, the last thing I want to do is document something.
You mentioned your photography aesthetic, and I know there's a story there
There
with.
is a story. It was in Rome. It was our last day. I was there with my girlfriend at the time and another couple. And, I'm in my late 20s, I think. And the last night we were there, we were leaving in the morning back to the States. And the last night we were there, we were in Aventine, which is one of the really old quarters of Rome. It was on these 5 hills. So it's one of the oldest parts in Rome. And I just had this thing happened where it really was an epiphany. I mean, you have little epiphanies, I think, when you work in the studio or you have these little things that just seemingly come out of nowhere. But this was like a full blown, it's like, oh shit, I saw the world in a different way. So we were walking around this old part of Rome and the wall, like we walked by this theater that had been there probably 1,000 years. And on the wall, there were all these cracks and posters that for, hundreds and hundreds of years they've been putting so there was all these weird sort of shapes and colors and cracks and fragments of things. And I started noticing it all around the quarter. And I suddenly saw like, these are little abstract paintings that are all over this place that are about this big and they should be blown up about this big. And it would be the greatest abstract paint. It just hit me. I'm like, there's all these compositions everywhere. And I couldn't stop seeing them, but the light was wrong because I just had I had a K100 or K1000, whatever it is, Pentax, great camera. And, they're teeny little streets, even smaller than most of Italy and Rome because it's the oldest part. So there were shadows on everything. And I realized I was going to have to come back the next morning if I was going to take photos. And we had to get on the plane though. So I was going to have to, so I went and 6 o'clock in the morning, I was waiting there when the sun came up, sitting in a cafe. And as soon as it hit the walls, I started taking, I shot 3 rolls of film and got them back and had a great little walk across Rome too, from the hotel to Aventine. Weird at night and right as it started getting light, it was sort of priceless. But so I got back to the States and got the film developed, and there were some good shots in there. They weren't all great, of course, but just cracks and wall. But it's like, okay, I got something to do, to follow. And that sort of idea of finding weird compositions or somehow fulfilling compositions in weird places and sometimes, sizes like micro and macro and stuff. And I think that sort of aesthetic I carried with to the video stuff. And just start at a certain point, just stop thinking about it narratively, stop thinking about even the elements of it. Once you get all that stuff together, like your palette of images, then just make it look good. Like then make it look great. And don't worry about what it means or if it looks great, that's it. And then you will end up with a composition that hasn't been ever on video before. I think part of it is it's sort of like it's where that idea of I don't want to document comes from. I mean, you found an interesting way to the same conundrum that I have, which is like you say, your stuff looks and feels organic. You think, oh, I'm looking at a flower, and it's
Nature.
like, or is it a squid?
Yeah.
And then and then you realize, well, wait a second, no, this is a painting.
Right.
It isn't any of those things, even
Right.
though it's referencing them. So that's sort of, it's a different way of getting out of the same box.
Yeah.
Because I think that's my best reaction to art, whether it's mine or someone else's, is when you think like, wow, this is amazing. This is beautiful on some level. I'm old fashioned that way. I like art that on some level is beautiful. I mean, it doesn't have to be conventionally beautiful, but what is it? Like, what am I looking at? Like that idea of like, and I don't even quite know what's going on, but I'm getting something.
To me, I think about how perception works and how what we perceive everything, and then our brain filters out just a very small sliver of it. And there's something really exciting about having this kind of like intuitively, like I I recognize something or I see something, something is there, but it didn't reach my logical brain. So I don't know what it is, but I know something is there. And that's really exciting. I think that's something that art can do. That's really rewarding if that is something that you pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just it's that thing again about your brain doing something new.
Hmm.
And it's you're right, it happens on both ends. There's, I tend to gravitate towards abstract things, and I would say things that are it's like composition. I've somehow real and that's what I like about abstract. It's like if you get rid of total anything literal or narrative and it's just
Hmm.
composition or there's a few other things, texture and color and of course, but there's something about that. That's how I see the entire world, everything. You interpret the world in a certain way.
Yeah.
And it's like if you can just figure out what that is and just embrace it. It's like just
Yeah.
listen to it and trust whatever that is, because that's the only thing you've got.
Right.
It's different
Yeah.
than anybody else, is whatever that thing
Yeah.
is.
So what are you most passionate about right now?
Hmm. Um, well, I've got three projects that I'm working on right now or ignoring, maybe I'm ignoring all three of them. But one's a writing project and one's a short film project, and those two are connected. It's sort of the same thing. Um, those are sort of the big ones. And then actually, maybe the thing I'm or that's fun, or maybe it's a side thing or whatever. But if you see back here, that's from that Ornette Coleman um,
Yeah.
thing.
So just because this is a podcast,
Oh,
you
right.
were pointing at a large canvas, a very abstract shape, but it's also not abstract if you know what you're looking at. Um,
Right. And it's a silhouette of a musician, Ornette Coleman, um, playing the saxophone, but in, weird colors and stuff. And yeah, it's like if you can look at it and almost think it's a Klein, or
mhm,
uh Motherwell,
mhm.
like it's
Yeah.
just and it's actually and then once you clicks or if you know what you're looking for, you realize, oh, it's somebody playing the saxophone. Um and yeah, that was a video project in which I then pulled, did an installation and a live performance thing and then pulled those images into these big stills. And there's something about that I really like, the capturing but not documenting, using the act of someone creating something else, in this case, music, and then doing my thing on it. And again, it sort of gives me the freedom to not, I don't try and tell the story about anything. I don't try and but I just keep really tight on the musician or on the instrument and think, okay, how can I make this into a beautiful composition?
Yeah. When you say that, you see compositions and you see everything like you think in compositions, you pay attention to on some level. There's very specific ones. And so when you're looking at a scene and you're recording it, you are extracting from it those compositions.
Yeah, yeah, I think
You're
that's true. I didn't think about it that way, but yes, that's true. If you make art, it's sort of your opportunity to show your bias or show your whatever your
point of
unique
view.
filter is,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I think people react to that even when that isn't their
Hmm.
view. In fact, more when it's not
Hmm.
their filter. And they may not know even that that's what it is. I mean, that's one of the cool things about art. I think you were sort of alluding to it when you said something about it, resonating but I think a lot of that's subconscious. And you and I talked about this before, but it's become more and more clear to me that the idea of synchronicity is really a big part in things that I make. And it's that idea, um, I read as a little kid this the introduction sounds crazy, but the introduction to the I Ching, and it was written by Carl Jung, and it was about synchronicity. And I was too young to quite understand it, but I was like, God damn, there's something really interesting here, because he's basically saying there's a whole nother way to look at the world or reality that isn't about causation. And I just knew that, like, okay, that's interesting, but I didn't quite get it. And then many years later, I got to read it again, and I started clicking. And it's the idea that each moment contains, in every detail of any moment, contains the essence of that moment. And I trust that in this sort of video and photography stuff. I trust that that is true, so that when I have a blurred picture of Ornette Coleman playing an amazing saxophone solo, or James Carter, or anyone, or some guy playing on the street, that even if you can't tell that that's what's happening, that someone's playing a musical instrument, that the energy of that is somehow, its essence is still in that image.
Yeah.
So I don't need to deliver that part
Right.
in a weird way. I mean, that's how I look at it.
And the word that comes to mind to me here is synesthesia.
Hmm.
Um, and which makes sense because you are a multidisciplinary artist, and it's like what you're capturing is what you're feeling when you're hearing the music and participating in that event. You're not capturing visually anything that's visible to the eye. So there's always this very kinetic and like musical aspect to your videos.
Cool. Thanks. So these, one of the things I'm doing with, like, with the Ornette thing and some of the other musicians I've shot is, so that's video, and then I'll take a still from the video, and then I'll put that into a multimedia compositing software where I can play with different levels. So I can have like put a still with different things going on behind it or in front of it or around it, and play around with that. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll get those elements. I'll start with video, turn them into stills, then play around with them while I'm listening to the music that they played during the thing. So, and then I will then pull a still. I can either turn that into a video or pull a still from it. So it's like these stills were made of musicians, were made were shot while they were playing it, making the music, but then they were mixed and fucked around with while I was listening to the music. So there should be, even though you don't need, I don't say anything about it, but it's like,
Yeah.
hopefully it's instilled in there.
And that's the interesting thing here. I think sometimes that question comes up, at least in photography, like what part of it is the art part? Is it the part where you click the shutter, or is it the part where you actually work on the image? And in in what I do, so much the most important part is the process for me. Like it's the most
Yeah.
important part. Like what is left after the fact that are, sometimes is great, sometimes not so great, but it has a life of its own. But what's most rewarding to me is being able to go through that process. And so what you're describing here is part of that creative process that starts when you collect the footage, but then it goes all through all of these other steps where you're actually composing
Yeah.
your art. Uh,
Yeah. And it's funny because the answer, of course, is it can come from both, the
right,
photo, like, it's
of
like,
course.
yeah, I mean, sometimes if you're starting off with just a great photo or a great composition, or with you, a great idea, where I know sometimes you work off of, you see something in nature and you take a photo of it, and then that's
Mhm.
your working inspiration to play. And of course, sometimes it's great if that beginning, whatever your beginning thing is, in jazz, the melody
Hmm.
that you're going to start improvising or doing your thing on, then you just do work with that, and sometimes it comes later, like, oh, I didn't think this photo
Right.
was.
That's the discovery or the becoming. That's to me like the most, that's the exciting part of the process and of art making is you can have great ideas, but in the process of making them, like other decisions come in. And in the process, you're creating something that never existed before. And that discovery is just one of the most rewarding things.
It's almost like a little gift that you can get sometimes, even if nobody else sees it or nobody else
It's for, yeah,
likes it the way you do or whatever, but where you're like, wow, I've never seen anything like this
yeah,
before,
yeah.
and it totally clicks with me.
So, final question, and it's one that I ask all my guests. What is your definition of success, and how has it changed over time?
Wow, interesting. Yeah. Um, well, I think it's still evolving.
Good.
Number one, yeah. I mean, I think it's always evolving. But I think I mean, the one thing that sticks out is the big evolution is what you just said about that you like the process. Like that is and it took me a long time to realize that was that has to be enough, sort
Mm,
of. I mean, of course, you want to put things out at the other end of your process, and it's better if you can get them out into the world and that someone else appreciates them. But you're right. But it's embracing that process. And I think for a long time I looked too much at the towards what the result was going to be, um, rather than just. I mean, it took a sort of getting to a certain point, in my late 30s, 40s, where I was like, oh, I do know, like when I do get a good idea, I know what to do with it. Like I know how to put it through my thing, and I do enjoy that. But I think it isn't until, lately where I realize, and that's enough. Like
mm,
you can't, I mean, that doesn't mean don't care about putting things out into the world and, you know, what have you. But I think success has to be more like you get to do that, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
that you've been able to create the space in your life or make it, or it got handed to you or but you're making use of it. Like you are doing that. And it's just a way, and also I realized it's just a way to go through life. I mean, it's just sort of a way of being, participating in the world.
yeah.
Because as we both said before, it doesn't seem to really matter. Like even if I say, okay, I'm not painting anymore, I'm not an artist anymore, and I'm not going to get in any shows, and I don't care, and I'm just not going to do anything. I'm not doing that. You end up doing stuff anyway.
Yeah.
So if you say it's just a way of sort of moving through your life,
Yeah.
and
You're never gonna not want to express yourself. I mean, that's just a human condition, I think.
yeah, and it's fun, like you said
Yeah.
before, like in the process is fun.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think, success. I mean, of course, I'd love to be making a bunch of money doing this, um, and that's one kind of success. But I think just doing, there's nothing wrong with
Right.
that kind of success, of course. But don't miss out on the other, you know, the day to day. You can be successful every day just by, you know,
Dave,
it's
how can people find you and your work?
it's impossible to find me or my work. No, that's not. David Olson Media.
And I'll
.com.
have notes. In the notes, I'll have links. So you
Okay.
are online
I am
and
online. I'm on Instagram. I don't use my Instagram very much, but there I'm trying to use it more. It's David O Media, I believe. David O Media on Instagram. And it's funny, it's like I used to do the social media stuff for a living, so at least partially, like do social media stuff for clients. And so now when it's for me, I'm just like, I don't want to do it. Like feels that part feels kind of like work.
work.
But I'm trying to be better at
Yeah.
it because it's a lovely way to do things. So
Wow.
how about you?
It's
What are you doing right now? What's your
um I'm,
You have a show coming up?
I do have a show coming up. It's a fun little show. It's in Springfield, Illinois, and it's in a micro gallery. The gallery is like maybe 2 by 2 by 2,
Cool.
tiny, tiny gallery that sits on a pole, and the artwork that goes into that gallery is miniature. And the owner of the gallery contacted me and invited me to have a show there of the miniature paintings of the little betta fish, which
Oh, cool.
it's just a lot of fun. But beyond that, I'm kind of in between things. Going through that incubator stage where it's a strange place to be. I've been in this place enough to know that I always come out of it, and to also know that some of the best things that we do and some of the best insights and epiphanies and some of the best happens, and you can trace it back to a moment that's just a low. Um,
Sad but
it's
true.
yeah. And so I know that the next thing that I'm gonna do is gonna be really exciting and it's gonna be new. And that not knowing what it is, or when it's gonna happen can cause a little bit of anxiety and frustration because I'm a
Yeah.
working artist and I'm not making the art.
Right.
But at the same time, the fact that I don't know what it is, that's what's really exciting about it. It will take, when it takes shape and it's just gonna be like, "Oh, wow."
And yeah, it is kind of exciting because
That's
yeah,
growth to me. Like that's the becoming, it's that if there is a kind of ideal, like higher self ideal Hava out there who, perfect, like whatever accomplishments, and I'm just fumbling, fumbling through but towards that.
yeah,
And that's life. Like if I can just snap my fingers and get there, like why go through
right,
the life?
right. There's nothing to do if
Yeah.
you're, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also, I mean, I think it's cool. Like, you're set up for when something strikes your fancy.
Mhm.
It's just like if you're a writer, you better quickly start carrying around, pen and paper all the time because you got to be ready to jot stuff down. It's just, and that's sort of like what having a studio is, or having a space to work is that and if you're, and as you well know, if you're playing around, even if you don't really have an idea, that also allows those ideas
Exactly.
to come
That
out.
play. Yeah. Um, Actually, that play is so much more important than we think. Um,
It's where all the
it's
good stuff comes from. I mean, you
it's
can
where
learn all the other shit in school or just by,
yeah.
copying other people's work and you can
Mhm.
whatever, but it's when you play around and then it gives that opportunity for you to recognize the thing that nobody else
Right.
recognizes or thinks
Yeah.
isn't interesting. No one else notices that. Well, it's like,
Mhm.
great. So that's your thing. Well, I'm looking forward to your new shtick as well. Whatever your
Yeah.
new creative.
You'll know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let
Thank you
me
so
know.
much.
Thank you.
It's a great conversation. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks again for tuning in. That's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please help us out by leaving a review, a comment, subscribing, sharing it with your friends. Every little bit helps, and I really appreciate it. And before we go, I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor and producer, Art Storefronts. If you've been thinking about turning your art into a real business or just want to level up your online presence, now is honestly the best time, especially with the holiday selling season coming up in Q4. I can't stress this enough. Art Storefronts isn't just a website builder. They're a full-blown partner for your art business. They give you the tools, education, and marketing support to actually make sales, not just sit online and hope. And if you're unsure whether your art will sell, no worries. Just head to artstorefronts.com and sign up for a demo. They'll give you a free art review and a marketing assessment of your art to show you exactly what's possible. So go to artstorefronts.com, Tell them Hava sent you, and I'll catch you on the next episode.